Red dust swirled across the main road of Clearwater as 3 alien ships descended from the orange sky of Meridian Prime. The mining town had been quiet for months, with only the steady hum of extraction equipment breaking the silence. Now, everything changed in a matter of minutes. Beth Williams dropped her datapad and rushed outside her office. As mayor of this small settlement, she had received the transmission about incoming diplomatic visitors, but seeing the sleek silver vessels in person made her stomach twist with worry. These ships looked nothing like the friendly trading vessels that occasionally visited human colonies. They looked built for war. The largest ship landed in the town square with a mechanical whine that made every dog in Clearwater start barking. Beth watched as a ramp extended and several tall figures emerged. The aliens stood nearly 8 feet tall, with pale blue skin and 4 arms each. Their leader wore elaborate robes that shimmered in the afternoon light. "I am Ambassador Krell of the Varathi Empire," the lead alien announced in perfect English, his voice carrying across the square through some kind of amplification device. "We come to discuss your planet's future within our protection." Beth straightened her simple work clothes and walked forward. She had dealt with difficult situations before during her 20 years managing mining operations, but nothing like this. "Welcome to Clearwater. I'm Mayor Beth Williams. We appreciate your visit, though we weren't expecting such a large delegation." Krell looked down at her with what might have been amusement. His large black eyes seemed to examine her like she was an interesting insect. "Your species has a tendency to underestimate the importance of proper diplomatic protocol. We have come a long way to offer you opportunities." Behind the aliens, more figures emerged from the ships. These looked like soldiers, carrying weapons that hummed with energy. Beth noticed they spread out quickly, taking positions around the square. For a diplomatic mission, this felt very much like an occupation. "Perhaps we should move this discussion to the town hall," Beth suggested, gesturing toward the largest building on the square. "We can offer you refreshments and discuss whatever opportunities you mentioned." As they walked across the dusty ground, one of the Varathi soldiers stopped suddenly. He pointed at a small brown and white creature that had emerged from behind the general store. The animal was about the size of a house cat but stockier, with a distinctive white stripe running down its back. "What is that primitive creature?" the soldier asked, his voice filled with disgust. "That's Buster," Beth replied without thinking. "He belongs to Pete Robinson, one of our miners. It's a honey badger from Earth." The aliens looked at each other and made sounds that might have been laughter. Krell shook his head slowly. "Your species keeps wild beasts as companions? How remarkably primitive. On civilized worlds, we control or eliminate such creatures. They serve no purpose except to create chaos." Pete Robinson had been walking toward the square when he heard the commotion. He was a thin man in his 60s with calloused hands and kind eyes. Seeing the aliens staring at Buster, he quickened his pace. The honey badger noticed Pete approaching and trotted over to him, but not before giving the aliens a long, steady look that seemed unusually thoughtful for an animal. "Buster here helps with pest control," Pete explained as he reached the group. "Honey badgers are incredibly smart. They can solve problems and adapt to new situations better than most animals." Another round of alien laughter followed. The soldiers spoke to Krell in their own language, and the ambassador nodded. "My colleague suggests that if your smart animals are the best this world can offer, perhaps you need more guidance than we initially thought." Beth felt her face flush with anger, but she kept her voice level. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion inside where we can all be more comfortable." The town hall had been built to handle the entire population of Clearwater, all 230 people. Now it felt small with the large aliens filling the space. Beth had called together the town council, which included Pete, along with Linda Hayes, who ran the mechanical shop, David Park, who owned the general store, and Ann Miller, who taught the settlement's children. Krell took his place at the head of the table without being invited. His 4 arms moved with practiced precision as he activated a holographic display showing star charts and trade routes. "Your settlement sits on valuable mineral deposits that would benefit from proper management. The Varathi Empire offers protection and technological advancement in exchange for resource extraction rights." "We already have mining operations," Linda pointed out. And we're part of the Human Colonial Union. Any major agreements would need to go through proper channels. The Human Colonial Union, Krell repeated the words like they tasted bad. A loose collection of scattered settlements with no real power or authority. The galaxy is becoming a dangerous place. Small, unprotected colonies often face unfortunate circumstances. The threat was clear even though Krell smiled as he said it. Beth exchanged glances with her council members. What kind of unfortunate circumstances? Pirates, slavers, natural disasters that overwhelm primitive technology. Krell listed them casually. The Varathi Empire has the resources to prevent such tragedies. Of course, prevention requires certain commitments from the protected parties. Outside, Buster had followed the group to the town hall. The honey badger found a spot near an open window where he could hear the conversation inside. Unlike normal animals who might ignore human speech, Buster listened intently to every word. His dark eyes tracked the movements of each alien, noting their positions and body language. When one of the Varathi soldiers moved closer to the window, Buster didn't run away like a normal animal might. Instead, he studied the alien's equipment, memorizing details about the weapons and communication devices. The soldier noticed the small creature watching him and made a dismissive gesture. Even their animals are too stupid to know when they're outmatched, the soldier commented to his companion. Inside the hall, the negotiations were becoming more tense. Krell had increased his demands, now insisting on immediate mining rights and the establishment of a Varathi administrative center. Your current operations are inefficient. We estimate a 10-fold increase in extraction rates with proper management. And what happens to our people? Ann Miller asked. This is our home, not just a business venture. Useful individuals would be retained in appropriate positions, Krell replied smoothly. Others could be relocated to settlements better suited to their capabilities. The Varathi Empire believes in optimal resource utilization, including human resources. The room fell silent. The aliens were talking about slavery, though they used polite words to disguise it. Beth realized that this wasn't a negotiation at all. It was a demand with the illusion of choice. We'll need time to consider your proposal, Beth said carefully. Krell's expression hardened. Of course. You have until tomorrow evening to reach a decision. My ships will remain here to ensure your safety during this important deliberation period. He stood up, his full height making the humans feel small. I trust you'll make the wise choice. The alternative would be most unfortunate for everyone. As the aliens filed out of the town hall, Pete noticed Buster had disappeared from his spot by the window. The honey badger was nowhere to be seen, which was unusual. Buster typically stayed close to Pete, especially around strangers. What Pete didn't know was that Buster had already begun his own investigation. The honey badger had slipped away during the meeting, using his natural stealth to approach the alien ships. Unlike the humans who saw only advanced technology and overwhelming force, Buster saw opportunities and weaknesses. The aliens had made their first mistake by underestimating what they called a primitive animal. It would not be their last. Linda Hayes was fixing a broken water pump behind her shop when Pete Robinson appeared at her back door. The older man looked worried and kept glancing around as if someone might be watching. Linda had known Pete for 5 years, ever since he arrived in Clearwater, and she had never seen him this nervous. We need to talk, Pete said quietly. Somewhere private. Linda wiped her hands on a rag and led him into her workshop. The space was filled with tools and spare parts for the mining equipment that kept the town running. She closed the door and activated a noise dampener that would prevent anyone from hearing their conversation. It was a precaution she used when discussing sensitive mechanical issues with the miners. It's about Buster, Pete began, then stopped and shook his head. No, it's about much more than that. Linda, I haven't been completely honest about my background. Linda raised an eyebrow. Everyone in Clearwater had secrets from their past. That was part of the appeal of frontier settlements. Go on. Before I came here, I worked for a research company on Earth. We were studying animal intelligence and developing ways to enhance cognitive abilities. The goal was to create working partnerships between humans and animals for dangerous jobs, like mining and exploration. Pete pulled out a small device that looked like a medical scanner. Buster isn't just a regular honey badger. His brain has been modified with genetic therapy and neural enhancement technology. He's as smart as any human, maybe smarter in some ways. He understands everything we say. He can solve complex problems, and he has tactical thinking abilities that would impress military planners. Linda stared at the device, then at Pete. You're telling me that little furry guy is some kind of super genius? That's exactly what I'm telling you, Pete replied. And right now, he's doing something that might save all of us. Meanwhile, Buster was demonstrating abilities that would have shocked the Varathi soldiers if they had been paying attention. The honey badger had spent the night exploring the alien ships using ventilation shafts and maintenance tunnels that were too small for the tall aliens to use effectively. His enhanced intelligence allowed him to understand the basic principles of the alien technology. While a normal animal might be confused by the complex machinery, Buster could recognize patterns and purposes. He identified the ship's power systems, communication arrays, and weapon storage areas. The honey badger's natural fearlessness combined with his enhanced cognition made him the perfect spy. He moved through the ships like a ghost, memorizing layouts and eavesdropping on conversations between the Varathi soldiers. In the command center of the main ship, Buster listened as Krell spoke with his officers in their own language. The honey badger's enhanced brain had learned to recognize patterns in the alien speech, allowing him to understand the basic meaning of their words. The humans are even more primitive than our scouts reported, Krell was saying. They have no real defenses, no advanced weapons, and they keep animals as pets. When the battle fleet arrives tomorrow, we'll have complete control within hours. Another officer responded, What about the human colonial union? Won't they send reinforcements? Krell made a sound like laughter. By the time they receive word of our presence here, this world will be fully integrated into the Empire. The humans will be working in the mines under proper supervision, and their resources will be flowing to more important worlds. Should we eliminate the local leadership? A third voice asked. Not immediately. We'll keep a few of them alive as examples. The others can be sold to the labor markets on the outer rim. Humans fetch good prices as workers, especially the smaller ones who can fit into tight spaces. Buster processed this information with growing anger. The aliens weren't just threatening the humans of Clearwater. They were planning to enslave them. The honey badger's enhanced intelligence began formulating a response plan that would use every advantage he possessed. Back in Linda's workshop, Pete was explaining more details about Buster's capabilities. The enhancement process gave him perfect memory, advanced problem-solving skills, and the ability to coordinate complex plans. But he still has all the physical advantages of a honey badger. He's incredibly strong for his size, almost impossible to intimidate, and he can dig through almost anything. Why didn't you tell anyone about this before? Linda asked. Because I was afraid of exactly this situation, Pete replied. If the Galactic Council or any of the major powers found out about enhanced Earth animals, they would either steal the technology or destroy it as a potential threat. Buster and I came here to live quietly and avoid attention. Linda looked out her window toward the alien ships in the town square. Looks like that plan didn't work out so well. Maybe it did, Pete said thoughtfully. Maybe this is exactly where we needed to be. At that moment, Buster was putting his plan into motion. The honey badger had identified critical vulnerabilities in the Varathi security systems. The aliens relied heavily on automated sensors and computer-controlled defense systems. They assumed that any threat would come from human-sized opponents, using recognizable weapons and tactics. They never considered that a small animal might systematically sabotage their equipment from the inside. Buster began with the communication systems. Using his claws, he carefully damaged specific circuits that would cause the aliens to lose contact with their incoming fleet. The damage looked like normal wear and tear from an old system, rather than deliberate sabotage. Next, he moved to the power distribution network. The honey badger's enhanced understanding of engineering principles allowed him to identify which components could be safely damaged without causing explosions that might hurt innocent humans. He created power fluctuations that would disable weapons and sensors at critical moments. Throughout the ship, Varathi technicians began reporting system failures. The problems seemed random and unrelated, which frustrated the aliens who prided themselves on their advanced technology. They blamed the primitive conditions on Meridian Prime, never suspecting that a small Earth animal was methodically dismantling their advantages. While Buster worked inside the ships, he also began preparing the area around Clearwater for what he knew would be a battle. The honey badger's digging abilities, enhanced by his intelligence, allowed him to create a network of tunnels that connected important buildings throughout the town. These tunnels were too small for the tall Varathi soldiers, but perfect for humans and other Earth animals. Buster designed them with multiple entry and exit points, creating a hidden transportation system that would allow the defenders to appear and disappear quickly during a fight. The honey badger also began gathering intelligence about the other Earth animals in Clearwater. Pete had brought several species to help with various tasks around the settlement. There were dogs for security, cats for pest control, and even some chickens that helped with waste management and provided eggs. 2. The Varathi. These were just more examples of human primitiveness. To Buster, they were potential allies who could be coordinated into an effective fighting force. The honey badger began visiting each animal, using scent markers and body language to communicate simple messages about the coming danger. By the second evening, Buster had completed the initial phase of his plan. The alien ships were compromised but not obviously damaged. The tunnel network was ready for use. The other animals had been alerted and were showing signs of unusual alertness and cooperation. As Pete walked through town looking for his companion, he found Buster sitting calmly near the town hall, grooming his fur as if nothing unusual was happening. But Pete noticed the honey badger's eyes were focused on the alien ships, and there was something in his expression that looked almost like satisfaction. "You've been busy, haven't you?" Pete said quietly. Buster looked up at him with those intelligent, dark eyes and made a soft chittering sound that Pete had learned to recognize as agreement. Then the honey badger stood up and walked toward the edge of town, pausing to look back as if inviting Pete to follow. Pete followed his enhanced companion into the growing darkness, wondering what the honey badger had prepared for the aliens, who thought they were dealing with primitive animals and helpless humans. He had a feeling that Krell and his forces were about to learn a very important lesson about underestimating Earth's creatures. Ambassador Krell stood in the town square with his arms crossed, watching the human settlement wake up to what he expected would be their last day of independence. The morning sun cast long shadows across Clearwater as people emerged from their homes to begin another day of work. They moved quietly, avoiding direct eye contact with the Varathi soldiers who had positioned themselves at key locations throughout the town. "Such a peaceful scene," Krell commented to his second-in-command, Officer Vash. "It seems almost unfortunate to disturb their simple existence." Almost. Vash checked his communication device for the third time in 10 minutes. "Sir, we're still having difficulty reaching the battle fleet. The communication array keeps experiencing random failures." "Local interference from the mining equipment," Krell waved dismissively. "Primitive technology often causes such problems. The fleet will arrive on schedule regardless." What neither alien realized was that their communication problems were not random at all. Buster had spent the early morning hours completing his sabotage of their systems, ensuring that the Varathi forces would be isolated when the time came to act. Mayor Beth Williams walked across the square toward Krell, her face showing the strain of a sleepless night. She had called an emergency town meeting for that afternoon, though she doubted the discussion would change anything. The aliens had made their intentions clear, and the implied threat of their battle fleet left little room for negotiation. "Ambassador Krell," she said formally, "the town council will have an answer for you this evening as requested." "I trust it will be the correct answer," Krell replied. "My patience has limits, as does my willingness to offer generous terms." As they spoke, Buster emerged from a tunnel entrance hidden beneath the general store. The honey badger carried something in his mouth, a small device that had been part of a Varathi sensor array. He trotted across the square, seemingly oblivious to the armed aliens, and disappeared behind the mechanic shop. "Your animal appears to be malfunctioning," Officer Vash observed with amusement. It should have learned to fear our presence by now. Honey badgers don't really do fear, Beth replied without thinking. They're known for attacking things much larger than themselves. Both aliens laughed at this comment. How wonderfully primitive, Krell said. An animal that doesn't understand its place in the natural order. Perhaps we should have our soldiers demonstrate proper hierarchy. But when Vash looked around for Buster, the honey badger had vanished again. This disappearing act was becoming a pattern that the Varathi soldiers were starting to find annoying. Every time they noticed the small creature, it would vanish into what seemed like thin air. What they couldn't see was the extensive tunnel network that now connected most of Clearwater's important buildings. Buster had worked through the night, using his natural digging abilities enhanced by his intelligence to create a hidden transportation system. The tunnels were perfectly sized for humans to crawl through quickly, but too small for the tall Varathi to use effectively. David Park was restocking shelves in his general store when he found something unusual near his back door. A small pile of Varathi equipment components sat on his loading dock, each piece carefully disabled but not obviously destroyed. The damage looked like normal wear and tear rather than sabotage. David examined the components with growing excitement. As a former electronics technician, he recognized some of the alien technology. These were parts of communication devices and sensors that could be reverse engineered or used to jam similar equipment. A soft scratching sound from outside caught his attention. David looked out to see Buster sitting near his door, watching him with those unusually intelligent eyes. The honey badger looked at the equipment, then at David, then back at the equipment. "Did you bring me these?" David asked quietly. Buster tilted his head in what looked remarkably like a nod, then trotted away toward the school building. Ann Miller was preparing lessons for her students when she noticed something carved into the dirt outside her classroom window. Lines and marks that looked almost like a map of the town, with symbols marking the positions of Varathi guards and patrol routes. The markings were too precise and detailed to be random animal scratches. As she studied the pattern, Anne realized she was looking at a tactical intelligence report. Someone or something had been watching the aliens very carefully and documenting their movements and positions. The information would be invaluable for anyone planning to move through town unseen. A small sound made her turn around. Buster sat in her classroom doorway, having somehow entered the building without her noticing. The honey badger looked at her, then at the markings outside, then back at her. The message was clear. Pay attention to this information. "You're trying to help us," Anne said wonderingly. "You understand what's happening." Buster approached her desk and used one claw to scratch a simple symbol in the wood. It was the same symbol that marked safe routes on the tactical map outside. Then he turned and left through a small opening that Anne hadn't noticed before, another entrance to the tunnel system he had created. By midday, mysterious deliveries and information were appearing throughout Clearwater. Linda Hayes found detailed diagrams showing the weak points of Varathi equipment scratched into the dirt behind her workshop. Pete Robinson discovered that someone had systematically damaged the power systems of all 3 alien ships, creating failures that would cascade at the worst possible moment for the invaders. The pattern was becoming clear to those who paid attention. Something was conducting a sophisticated intelligence and sabotage operation against the Varathi forces. The question was what and how. Pete finally revealed the truth to Linda and David when they met secretly in the mechanical shop that afternoon. He explained Buster's true nature and capabilities, watching their faces change from disbelief to amazement to determination. "So we have a secret weapon that the aliens don't know about," Linda summarized. "A weapon they think is just a dumb animal." "More than that," Pete corrected. "We have a strategic intelligence that has been studying them since they arrived. Buster has had more access to their ships and plans than any human spy could achieve." David held up one of the alien components that Buster had delivered. "And he's been systematically sabotaging their advantages. Look at this. The damage is so subtle that their own technicians are blaming equipment failures on local conditions." As they talked, more evidence of Buster's preparations became apparent. The other Earth animals in Clearwater were behaving unusually. more alert, more coordinated, and showing signs of organized activity. The dogs were taking patrol routes that covered the approaches to town. The cats were positioned near important buildings. Even the chickens seemed to be serving as an early warning system. He's organizing all the animals, Anne realized when she joined the secret meeting, creating a network of allies that the Varathi completely ignore because they think Earth animals are mindless. Pete nodded grimly. Buster knows the battle. Fleet is coming. He's been preparing for a fight that the aliens think will be completely one-sided. That evening, Krell gathered his forces in the town square for what he expected to be the final negotiation. The humans had assembled as requested, their faces showing resignation and defeat. Mayor Williams stepped forward with a document that looked like terms of surrender. "We have reached a decision," Beth announced to the crowd. "After careful consideration, the people of Clearwater reject the Varathi Empire's demands." Silence fell over the square. Krell's expression shifted from confident superiority to cold anger. "That is most unfortunate. You have chosen the difficult path when cooperation would have been so much easier." He activated a communication device to contact his battle fleet, but only static emerged from the speaker. Frowning, he tried again with the same result. Officer Vash reported similar problems with all their communication systems. "No matter," Krell said, though his confidence was shaken. "The fleet will arrive on schedule regardless of our ability to communicate. You have perhaps 6 hours to reconsider your decision before this becomes a military matter rather than a diplomatic one." As the aliens dispersed to their positions around town, they failed to notice a small brown and white figure watching them from the shadows. Buster had heard every word, and his enhanced intelligence was already calculating the final moves of his plan. The battle for Clearwater would begin soon, and the Varathi forces were about to discover that their most dangerous enemy was one they had dismissed as merely an animal. The honey badger's fearless nature, combined with his enhanced intelligence and careful preparations, was about to turn what the aliens expected to be an easy conquest into a disaster they would never forget. The sky above Clearwater turned dark with incoming ships. Ambassador Krell stood in the town square with his arms raised in triumph as 12 massive Varathi battle cruisers descended through the orange clouds of Meridian Prime. Each ship was 5 times larger than the diplomatic vessels that had arrived 2 days earlier, bristling with weapon arrays and troop transport bays. "Behold the true power of the Varathi Empire," Krell announced to the assembled humans. "Your resistance ends now. Surrender immediately, and some of you may survive to serve useful purposes." The townspeople huddled together in frightened groups, seemingly overwhelmed by the display of military might. Beth Williams stepped forward, her hands shaking but her voice steady. "We are civilian miners and farmers. We have no weapons that could threaten ships like those." "Precisely," Krell replied, with satisfaction. "This demonstration should convince even the most stubborn among you that cooperation is your only option." What the Varathi forces didn't realize was that their impressive fleet was about to land with severely compromised systems. Buster's careful sabotage over the past 2 days had created cascading failures throughout their technology. Communication networks were unreliable, sensors gave false readings, and power systems fluctuated unpredictably. The honey badger crouched in his tunnel, beneath the town hall, listening to the rumble of ships landing. His enhanced intelligence had calculated this moment carefully. The aliens were making their largest mistake by concentrating all their forces in one location while ignoring the network of Earth animals that had been preparing for this confrontation. As the first Varathi troops marched down the landing ramps, they spread out in standard military formation. Their energy weapons hummed with power, and their advanced armor gleamed in the afternoon sunlight. To any reasonable observer, the humans of Clearwater faced impossible odds. But Buster was not concerned with reasonable odds. Honey badgers had never been known for backing down from larger opponents, and enhanced intelligence only made him more dangerous, not more cautious. The attack began with what the Varathi later described as chaos from nowhere. One moment, their soldiers were taking secure positions around the town, and the next moment their equipment started failing in ways that made no sense. Weapon power cells drained instantly, communication devices produced only static, and sensor arrays showed enemy contacts in impossible locations. The first Varathi squad to experience the phenomenon was stationed near David Park's general store. Their squad leader was reporting successful deployment when every piece of electronic equipment they carried suddenly stopped working. Before they could react, human defenders emerged from tunnel entrances that hadn't been there during their initial reconnaissance. Linda Hayes popped up from behind a mining vehicle, carrying a jury-rigged energy weapon built from salvaged alien components. Her mechanical expertise had allowed her to reverse engineer the Varathi technology that Buster had provided, creating weapons that the aliens couldn't jam because they were based on the aliens' own systems. "Surprise," Linda said cheerfully, and opened fire. The Varathi soldiers tried to respond, but their weapons wouldn't activate. Their communication gear produced only squealing feedback. Even their armor's power systems were fluctuating wildly, making their movements clumsy and unpredictable. While the humans engaged the confused soldiers, Buster put the second phase of his plan into action. The honey badger emerged from his tunnel system and began coordinating the other Earth animals in a series of attacks that the Varathi had never imagined possible. The town's dogs had been positioned at strategic locations throughout Clearwater. At Buster's signal, they launched simultaneous attacks on isolated Varathi positions. But these weren't random animal assaults. Each dog knew exactly where to strike to disable alien equipment or create maximum confusion. Rex, Pete's German Shepherd, led a pack of 5 dogs in an assault on a Varathi communication post. The dogs moved with military precision, each one targeting specific equipment while avoiding the aliens' increasingly desperate attempts to fight back with malfunctioning weapons. The cats joined the battle by infiltrating the alien ships through ventilation systems and maintenance shafts. Their small size and natural stealth allowed them to reach critical systems that even Buster couldn't access easily. Under the honey badger's coordination, they systematically damaged life support systems, creating breathable atmosphere problems that forced alien crews to abandon their posts. Even the chickens played a role, serving as mobile distractions that drew Varathi attention at crucial moments. The aliens, already confused by their equipment failures, became increasingly frustrated trying to deal with apparently suicidal birds that seemed to appear everywhere at once. Ambassador Krell stood in the center of the chaos, screaming orders that his troops couldn't receive through their disabled communication systems. His impressive battle fleet was landing in a town that should have been defenseless, but everywhere he looked, his forces were being systematically dismantled by what appeared to be random malfunctions and animal attacks. "This is impossible," he shouted to Officer Vash. "Animals cannot coordinate military tactics. Equipment does not fail in these patterns without cause." Vash was trying to contact the battle fleet commanders, but his communication device produced only the sound of chittering that seemed almost like mocking laughter. "Sir, something is wrong with all our systems. Nothing is working as designed." That was when Krell saw him. A small brown and white creature sitting calmly on top of a disabled Varathi tank, watching the battle with obvious intelligence. The honey badger looked directly at the alien ambassador, tilted his head thoughtfully, and made a sound that could only be described as satisfied. "The animal," Krell whispered. "It's the animal." Understanding dawned with horrible clarity. The primitive creature they had dismissed and mocked was somehow behind the systematic destruction of their invasion force. The idea was so absurd that Krell almost rejected it, but the evidence was undeniable. Every disaster befalling his troops seemed to center around areas where the small Earth creature had been seen. Buster dropped down from the tank and trotted toward the command ship, moving with the fearless confidence that had made honey badgers legendary on Earth. Varathi soldiers tried to stop him, but their weapons remained dead in their hands. The small animal walked through their ranks like he owned the battlefield. Meanwhile, the human defenders were making devastating use of the tunnel network that Buster had prepared. They appeared in unexpected locations, struck hard with their improvised alien tech weapons, and vanished back underground before the Varathi could organize effective responses. Ann Miller emerged from a tunnel entrance behind a group of alien soldiers, carrying a mining laser that had been modified with Varathi power cells. "Class is in session," she announced, and began teaching the invaders painful lessons about underestimating Earth's creatures. The battle that was supposed to last minutes stretched into hours. The Varathi forces, despite their overwhelming technological advantages, found themselves fighting an enemy they couldn't understand or predict. Their equipment betrayed them at crucial moments. Their communications failed when they needed coordination most, and their opponents seemed to know their every move in advance. As the sun began to set over Meridian Prime, Ambassador Krell realized that his invasion was not just failing, it was becoming a complete disaster. His battle fleet was stranded on the ground with disabled systems, his troops were scattered and demoralized, and a small Earth animal had somehow orchestrated the entire catastrophe. Buster reached the command ship and began climbing up its landing ramp. Krell watched in fascination and growing dread as the honey badger approached the vessel that contained the most advanced technology in the Varathi fleet. Whatever the creature planned to do next, the alien ambassador was certain it would not end well for the Empire's forces. The battle for Clearwater was far from over, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Earth's animals had proven that intelligence, courage, and careful planning could overcome any technological advantage, and the galaxy was about to learn a lesson it would never forget. Inside the command ship, emergency lights flashed red and alarm systems wailed in the Varathi language. Buster walked through corridors filled with panicking alien crew members, his small form ignored in the chaos as technicians ran between failing systems trying to restore basic functions. The honey badger's enhanced intelligence had mapped every critical system during his previous reconnaissance visits. Now he moved with deadly precision toward the ship's central control core, the one system that could potentially restore Varathi coordination and turn the battle around. Ambassador Krell had followed Buster into his own command ship, abandoning his forces outside to pursue the small creature that had somehow orchestrated his military disaster. The alien leader moved through familiar corridors that now felt strange and threatening, following the sound of systematic destruction that seemed to echo from deeper within the vessel. "Seal the ship," Krell commanded his remaining crew. "Trap the animal inside and flood the corridors with sedative gas." But when the crew tried to activate the containment systems, nothing happened. The controls sparked and died under their hands, showing the same pattern of cascading failures that had crippled their entire invasion force. In the central control room, Buster reached the main computer core. The system was protected by multiple layers of security, all designed to prevent unauthorized access by intelligent beings who might try to hack or reprogram the technology. None of the safeguards were designed to stop a small animal who simply used his claws to physically damage the right components in the right sequence. The honey badger's understanding of engineering principles, enhanced by his modified intelligence, allowed him to identify exactly which circuits controlled what functions. He didn't need to hack the computer systems. He simply broke them in ways that would cause maximum disruption while avoiding dangerous explosions. As critical systems failed throughout the ship, the Varathi crew began evacuating. They stumbled through darkened corridors toward the exits, no longer concerned with military objectives but simply trying to escape from what had become a technological nightmare. Outside, the battle was reaching its conclusion. The last Varathi ground forces had retreated to a defensive position near their landing ships, but even there they found no safety. Their vessels were suffering the same system failures as the command ship, leaving the aliens stranded without reliable weapons, communication, or transportation. Pete Robinson emerged from a tunnel entrance near the alien perimeter, followed by Linda Hayes and David Park. The three humans carried an assortment of weapons built from salvaged Varathi technology, all designed with Buster's technical assistance to be immune to the aliens' jamming systems. "Attention Varathi forces," Pete called out in a voice that carried across the battlefield. "Your command ship is disabled, your fleet is grounded, and your invasion has failed. Surrender now, and we'll arrange safe transport off this world." The alien soldiers looked at each other with confusion and growing panic. Their training had prepared them for battles against other technologically advanced species, not for conflicts where their own equipment turned against them, and primitive animals coordinated sophisticated military tactics. Officer Vash, now the ranking Varathi officer still in contact with his troops, tried one more time to establish communication with the fleet commanders. His device produced only static, punctuated by what sounded like animal noises, chittering, barking, and meowing that seemed to mock his efforts. "This is not possible," Vash said desperately. "Animals cannot defeat a Varathi battle fleet. There must be some explanation." "There is," said a voice from behind him. Vash turned to see Ambassador Krell walking slowly across the battlefield. The alien leader's elaborate robes were torn and dirty. His forearms hung at his sides in defeat, and his expression showed a kind of shocked understanding that hadn't been there before. "The explanation is that we underestimated our enemy," Krell continued. "We assumed that intelligence could only exist in forms we recognized, that technology was the only measure of capability, and that small creatures could not pose threats to large ones." Krell stopped near the disabled command ship and pointed to a small figure sitting calmly on the landing ramp. Buster had emerged from the vessel and was grooming his fur with the satisfied air of a job well done. "That animal," Krell said quietly, "is more intelligent than any of us realized. It understood our plans, anticipated our tactics, and prepared countermeasures that neutralized every advantage we possessed. We were defeated not by superior technology, but by superior intelligence, applied through methods we never considered possible." The Varathi soldiers stared at the honey badger with new understanding. The small creature that they had dismissed as a mindless beast had somehow orchestrated the complete destruction of their invasion force. Buster looked up from his grooming and made direct eye contact with Ambassador Krell. For a long moment, the two beings, one towering and technologically advanced, the other small and seemingly primitive, regarded each other with mutual recognition. The honey badger tilted his head slightly in what might have been acknowledgement, then trotted away toward Pete Robinson. "We surrender," Krell announced to the humans of Clearwater. "Our forces will withdraw from this world and report our failure. To the Empire, you have won a victory that should not have been possible." Beth Williams stepped forward, still carrying the mining laser she had used during the battle. "We don't want to fight anyone. We just want to be left alone to live our lives in peace." "That may not be entirely possible," Krell replied honestly. "When word of this defeat spreads through the galaxy, other species will want to understand how a small human settlement defeated a Varathi battle fleet. Some will come as friends seeking to learn from you. Others may come as enemies hoping to claim your world before you can develop further." Pete had been listening to this exchange while Buster sat beside him. The honey badger looked up at his human companion with those intelligent dark eyes, and Pete could almost see the enhanced mind working through new possibilities. "Maybe that's not entirely bad," Pete said thoughtfully. "Maybe it's time for the galaxy to learn that Earth's animals are partners, not pets. That intelligence comes in many forms, and that cooperation between species can achieve things that individual brilliance cannot." Over the following days, as the Varathi forces prepared for departure, word of the Battle of Clearwater began spreading through galactic communication networks. The story seemed impossible to most who heard it, a tale of primitive animals defeating advanced technology through cunning and coordination. But for those who came to investigate, the evidence was undeniable. The Varathi ships bore the marks of systematic sabotage that could only have been carried out by someone with intimate knowledge of their systems. The tunnel network beneath Clearwater showed planning and engineering skill that impressed even alien experts. Most convincing of all were the recordings from Varathi equipment that had captured the coordinated actions of Earth animals working together with tactical precision. Ann Miller began documenting these events for the historical record, but she soon realized that her account would read like fantasy to anyone who hadn't witnessed it personally. How could she explain that a honey badger had outthought an entire alien invasion force? How could she describe the sight of dogs and cats working together in military formations or chickens serving as diversionary units in a battle for planetary freedom? "Future generations won't believe any of this," Anne said to Linda as they watched Buster playing with some of the local children. The honey badger was teaching them a game that looked suspiciously like tactical movement exercises, though the kids just thought it was fun. "Let them think it's just a story," Linda replied. "The important thing is that we know the truth. Earth's animals are our partners in ways the galaxy never understood." As the last Varathi ship lifted off from Meridian Prime, Ambassador Krell sent a final communication to Clearwater. We came here believing that strength was measured in weapons and intelligence was demonstrated through technology. We leave knowing that the greatest power comes from the bonds between different species working toward common goals. The Vaarathi Empire will not forget this lesson. The transmission ended, and the alien fleet disappeared into hyperspace, carrying with them a story that would change how the galaxy viewed Earth and its creatures. That evening, the people of Clearwater held a celebration in the town square. Tables were set up with food and drink. Music played from speakers that had been repaired with salvaged alien technology, and everyone who had participated in the battle was honored as a hero. When it came time to recognize Buster, the honey badger was nowhere to be found. Pete eventually located him behind the general store, investigating some interesting smells near the garbage containers. "Come on, Buster," Pete said. "Everyone wants to thank you for saving the town." The honey badger looked at him with those intelligent dark eyes and made a soft chittering sound that Pete had learned meant something like, "Just doing my job." Then Buster returned to his investigation of the garbage, apparently more interested in potential snacks than in ceremonies and speeches. Pete smiled and walked back to the celebration, leaving his enhanced companion to pursue more important matters. The galaxy might never fully understand what had happened at Clearwater, but that was fine. Some secrets were worth keeping, especially when they belonged to a honey badger who had proven that the most dangerous opponents were often the ones you least expected. In the years that followed, Clearwater became a symbol throughout human space of the partnership between humanity and Earth's animals. Scientists came to study the enhanced creatures, diplomats arrived to negotiate treaties with the animal allies, and historians tried to document the true story of the Battle of Clearwater. But for the residents of the small mining town, life gradually returned to normal. They extracted minerals, raised families, and went about their daily business with the knowledge that they were protected by the most unlikely guardian imaginable. Small fearless creature who had taught an entire galaxy that intelligence and courage could overcome any odds. And sometimes when visitors asked about the famous honey badger who had defeated the Vaarathi Empire, the townspeople would smile and point to a small brown and white figure exploring the edges of the settlement with boundless curiosity and unshakable confidence. "That's Buster," they would say. "He's just a honey badger, but then again there's no such thing as just a honey badger."